All right. Welcome to another series, a draft series brought here by Charles Barnes at BU_scouting on Twitter. We have an amazing guest today, Nick Farabaugh, a guy that I respect within the scouting community. I know you guys will enjoy his insight and his breakdowns. Today, we're going to be going over offensive linemen and tight ends in this 2021 draft class. This series is basically predicated on bringing up my top 10 guys that I've come up with throughout the whole process, January until I think as recent as mid-March. I haven't touched them, and I'm having analysts come on and kind of go back and forth, debunk these guys from top to bottom and give their opinion. Basically, for those that's first time watching me, I'm a guy that's been in football my whole life, from little league all the way to college, whether it's being in recruiting ranks, in the scout team, cutting up tape, and as recent as starting my own website and doing things like this. Without further ado, I have Nick Farabaugh, the great one. As I like to say, I really respect his work and especially trench work, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So, what's up, Nick?
Not much, Charles. Thanks for having me on, man. A lot of fun to talk about the big guys. That's what I was. I was a guard, so I played offensive line. I also played D line, so I understand both sides of the coin. I know strategies like that. So I truly am super excited to talk about offensive line. Don't forget, those tight ends. They're a little bit of our brothers, I guess. I know they're kind of like in the middle there, but we respect those tight ends as long as they like to get dirty. As long as they like to get dirty, we'll take those tight ends up. We'll take up for our tight ends.
Absolutely. Tell them a little bit about your vocation for broadcasting, if that's what you want to be eventually, and where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so man, I do want to do sports broadcasting. Right now, I'm doing that mainly at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh, doing a lot of different sports: football, baseball, soccer, basketball, all these. Heck, even gymnastics I've done. So, I'm going all over the spectrum. But I do write a lot of football related stuff. Pittsburgh Sports Now is where I write my Steelers stuff, and then I also write draft stuff for Pro Football Network, which I've been going really hard at these last few months because we are getting on draft time and all of that. And we have a mock draft simulator that we update weekly. So, we're getting into that. And then you can find my stuff on Twitter, man. Anything that I post on there, whether it's Steelers, draft, whatever else I talk about, at Farabaugh FB, FARABAUGH FB. So that's where you can find all my stuff. I cannot wait to get started on this. I'm very interested to see your rankings because I know tonight. I know both you and I. We don't adhere to the common, I guess, group think. We go
Absolutely.
outside the box.
Absolutely. And that's what I enjoy about you and then the guys that I'm going to be having on this series. So Nick is the guy that's going to kick it off, but there will be more. There will be reinforcement. But it's going to be guys that think, we're not copying Mel Kiper. We're not copying Todd McShay or whoever else you may look up to. We really do the work. We put in the hours, put in the sweat equity, as I like to call it. And we're gonna give you a show because I know Nick is gonna give us great. So I'm going to share the screen and find where these rankings are on this website real quick. Okay, boom. So here we are. The Barnes, for those that want to view this, blog.thebarnesuniversity.com. I set this up because I wanted to have basically a home for people who wanted to see my work. It was basically created for the youth. There's also another homepage that's more so youth training, but I try to make it as easy for a 10-year-old to read and digest, but as complex and fulfilling as a 40-year-old to read it. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. Let's start with the tackles. Boom. So as you can see, I didn't know at the time why I put the date on it, but now I know. So I haven't touched this since February 9th, as you can see. Came up with this, and as you can see, a lot of the guys back in February that I had high, a lot of the people are coming around, like a number 5, Robert Hainsey here. You see a lot of guys coming around to him. You see a lot of guys coming around to a Stone Forsyth, where he is right here. So you see these guys starting to emerge almost 2 months later. But I'm gonna speak my piece, and I'm gonna let Nick just kind of dissect it and kind of go through it. But one of my philosophy with offensive linemen is, I try to keep it simple. I did not play the position, but I see what works. I've been watching this league for a long time. I consult with guys that have played the position. My philosophy is I want guys that are big, physical. It's very simple. Sometimes we try to make football more complicated than it is. I want big, strong guys that can move, that can hold their own, that have a certain mentality to themselves, where nobody's touching my quarterback. I'm gonna do my assignment, and I'm gonna do it full speed and with physicality. As you can see, Penei Sewell is number 1. Surprise, Jackson Carman is at number 2. Pretty sure that'll get a lot of people buzzing. Liam Eichenberg at 3, Samuel Cosme at 4, Robert Hainsey at 5, Dylan Raylands at 6, Rashawn Slater at 7, James Hudson at 8, Christian Darrisaw 9, and Alex Otherwood at 10. So, Nick, tell me how you feel about these rankings. Who's missing? And as you can see at the bottom, I got 11 through 29. Who may I be missing, and how do you feel about it in general?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with your top guy. I mean, This isn't groupthink or anything. Penei Sewell's just built different, man. I mean, he just is, right? Like, absolutely. Everything he has. I mean, I know he measured in today a little. Like, I don't even care about the arm length. Like, who cares? That dude moves like a tight end, like, on the field. It's insane. And he can reach the second level and cut off like a 3-tech on the backside. And he did it multiple times, and he's only 20. It's insane. His like, he's done some very advanced things technically that he should not be able to do. Like, especially in pass pro. He's done like snatch trap. And I mean, listen, that's a technique that a lot of guys, like top O linemen, have not even mastered. Or he'll do the scoop technique, which is really good as well. And he has a lot of things that he does, and it's so advanced. And I feel like we don't appreciate how good Penei Sewell is. So I'm going to totally agree with you at 1. I don't even need to explain. All you have to do is turn on the tape. Watch how that man moves. Watch how he moves people. Sometimes offensive line tape, it doesn't have to be crazy. But, knowing the techniques and what Sewell does at an advanced level are things he should not be able to do at the age of 18 and 19. That is a very much a special player right there. Carman, I like Jackson Carman. I like him. I don't know if I like him as OT2. In fact, I think Carman might kick inside, like, to guard. I think he could be a really good guard because, listen, I think I totally agree with you here. The initial punch is powerful. That dude is powerful, and he moves you. And he's got really, really great pad level too. I think he plays really nice and low. I think he's a guy that you can look at and say, well, I can get a people mover here. I just don't love his footwork. First of all, I think he's got a little bit of a sloppy footwork. I think he has a false step there. He sometimes overextends because of that, or he'll not get to his spot in time, especially against speed rushers. And I think that's an issue for Carman. And I mean, it's not about the length or anything like that. I think Carman he doesn't have great footwork. And I'm not sure about his athleticism. I think he's fine athletically, but I don't think he's anything special. So my question is, would I rather have that at tackle where I know he's going to get beat against some of these better speed rushers, or am I going to move him inside where I can put him in a phone booth and just let him go and ram that 3-tech or ram that 5-tech, ram the 1-tech, and just go, right? Like, I think he'd be a fantastic guard at the next level. So Jackson Carman is a guy I do like. Not sure as much as you do, but I do like Jackson Carman. Now, some guy I noticed that wasn't in your top 10, but is in mine personally.
All right.
I like Dante Smith out of ECU. This is a guy that even before the Senior Bowl, I mean, he was a dude at East Carolina. This is a guy that moves especially well for his size, and he is toolsy. He's your classic toolsy guy, but he's got phenomenal hands, when he gets his hands on you, and this is something I really love about Dante Smith, when that guy gets his hands on you, you are not escaping that. Like, he is elite grip strength. If he gets that inside those pads and drives through, it's done. Dante Smith has elite length, and he's going to get his hands on you first most of the time. He's very eager with his hands. I love that about him. It's not too aggressive where he'll overextend and get caught napping to the inside. So he doesn't open up that inside hip. He keeps them disciplined, keeps them square, and he fires out. It's beautiful technique from Dante Smith there. I think he's got really great balance. I think he's got really good toughness. He'll move guys around. And I think he just has everything you kind of look for a really good left tackle, even if he's not totally there yet. Yes, he has some things to work on, his placement mainly. And I don't think he takes – I know he has the athleticism, but he misses guys on the second level, especially those linebackers and sometimes outside zone schemes, because I think he takes bad angles at times and has trouble framing those blocks. But, man, if he can fix some of that, Dante Smith can be a Pro Bowler, like, perennially. So this is a guy that I love. Dante Smith needs to be getting a lot more love. Christian Darrisaw, for me, that's a dude that I think has all-pro potential. I mean, everything I've seen from this guy, he's my OT too. This is a guy that shows out every single time I watch him on tape. He's a phenomenal athlete, just from the baseline. Phenomenal athlete, great power. But my thing with him is, you look at where he was his freshman year to where he is now, this is a completely different player. This is a guy that puts in the work. This is a guy that has molded his game from an athletic guy to a football player. So this is a guy that is phenomenal. He has shown off great technique. He mixes up his sets really well. Now, if you don't know, there are three different types of set, right? There's a jump set, there's a 45 set, there's a vertical set. What Darrisaw does is, because he has the great footwork, because he has the length, he has these physical tools, what he has done with his sets is he mixes them up depending upon the situation, and he keeps you off balance. And I think people don't understand there's a little bit of a mind game when it comes to playing O-line, because these pass rushers are going to recognize, oh, this is in this stance, he's going to go to this set. So I can set up this move against that set, and I know I can beat him. If I know he's going to go into a 45 set and get deep into the set because he knows I have good burst, well, I'm just going to beat him to the inside with a swipe club, right? And then rip through or swim through, whatever you do. So he's going to do that. I think Darrisaw is just so savvy with how he sets that up, with how he uses his hands, specifically with how he flashes them in different spots, and with how he showcases those combat skills. Darrisaw is a guy that reminds me a lot of Trent Williams, and I think he can be that type of level of guy. So I think Darrisaw is very much a special football player. And if it weren't for Penei Sewell, I think Darrisaw would be my OT1. I think he's a top 10 talent in this class. I love Christian Darrisaw. This guy's a phenomenal football player. Now, one of the guys that I think personally in your rankings, I'm very much happy to see Samuel Cosmi so high. I'm such a Cosmi fan. Yeah. I feel like I don't know, man. This is a guy. He's not getting the hype he should. Like, we look at him. I mean, we look at this guy. What does he not have? He has a nasty snap trap move, which is what I call Penei Sewell has that as well. But Cosmi uses it because he doesn't have elite length. So when he faces guys that can get him on his hands with those long arms or whatever, they can use their length to get him and hit him with some power. He just traps them and puts them in the turf. I mean, he does it beautifully. He just fires it out just before they fire it onto his chest, keeps his chest clean, and then he puts them in the dirt. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. And Cosmi's really done a nice job of mitigating his weaknesses because he has those great feet and he has those really good savvy hands that you mentioned down here. And I mean, he's not the strongest dude, but he's got good balance. He's got good core strength. He's not gonna be a Tevin Jenkins, right? Where you watch him and he's gonna throw you out the club and just, I mean, Jenkins, all you have to do is watch his game against Joseph Osai and look what he did to him. Cosmi's never going to do that. That's not what Cosmi does, but that's okay. He doesn't need to be. I think he's a zone guy mainly. He's going to be really savvy. He's going to knock off those back end guys when they're coming on that backside pursuit or in the front side. he can clear out those holes and has a good grip strength enough to move them and open up those holes. So I think Cosme has kind of all the tools you look for. He's a first round player. I think if he doesn't go in the first round, and I hope he does go in the first round because I think we're starting to see some come around on him. Thankfully we are. I think Cosme is a guy that you can see fitting in. Now another guy that I know you don't have, in this top 10. I don't know if he's in my top 10, but he's very close. Very close. We talked about him a little bit before we came on here. I think Stone Forsythe is pretty solid, man. I mean, this is a 6'9" mammoth of a dude, right? And all you have to do. I don't know where you are on Azeez Ojulari, but watch that game and watch what Stone Forsythe did to Azeez Ojulari. That's some people's edge one in this class. And Forsythe shut him down because he's so good with using his length. And yeah, he doesn't have great pad level because he's 6'9". I mean, that's just natural. But he's got pretty good bend. I don't think he's stiff in the hips for that size. I think he moves pretty well for a 6'9" dude. And that's all you really need at that point. You have pretty light feet. You can move in short areas. He's got the power. When he gets his hands on you, it's really tough to beat Stone Forsythe because his length is such a weapon. And then he has that powerful punch. And he has really good grip strength. So Stone Forsythe's a guy where you look at the tools and you say, well, yeah, he only does really one set. He really only does a jump set. He doesn't do a lot of vertical stuff. He's not super aggressive. He doesn't need to be. He's got it mastered. And he doesn't open the doors, very disciplined with his hips, very disciplined with his eyes. He's very good and he's polished. And I think Stone Forsythe's a guy that can start in this league much earlier than people will anticipate, probably higher than his draft position. Will I guess reflect that. Another guy that's not in your top 10 that's in mine for sure, Spencer Brown. Man, this dude, Spencer Brown might be my favorite tackle in the class that I've studied just because what he does. Because he has this tight end basketball background that you kind of look at, and that's where the footwork comes in, like phenomenal footwork. There's no wasted movement. It's super crisp, super clean. He gets up to the second level with ease. He cuts off linebackers, opens up those holes in zone blocking schemes. And then when you look at man or gap schemes, this is a dude that has the power and the pad level at 6'8", by the way. He plays with terrific bend, and he comes off with that flat back, drives through his legs, gets a lot of power, has great ability to do that. And I feel like he plays with much better pad level than you would think. Now, the thing that really gets me going for Brown, other than just the natural tools, because I think this guy has a phenomenal ceiling, and I would take him in probably round 2. Brown comes in to the league with phenomenal eyes. And now, so where does this come in? Stunts, right? Stunts like that, recognizing the blitzes. I think Brown is phenomenal and elite at this. Just recognizing different blitz schemes, reading the front, just reading where these blitzes can come from and using that tape study and translating it to tape. His processing ability, his mental processing is some of the best I've seen in this class. He's phenomenal at it. I think it's Eichenberg probably at 1 that has elite processing. Brown, it might be Sewell at 2, Slater at 3. I think Brown's right there with him. So I love what Spencer Brown brings to the table. I think the big thing for him, it's the word consistency. Doesn't have great consistency yet. He has some things that he needs to clean up, especially with his hands. The hand placement isn't great. Sometimes he can get wide. He's going to get called for a lot of holds early in his career, I feel like. And he opens that gate a little bit. And so what does that mean? He's not staying square. He's kind of letting the guys that can bend around that edge, especially the bendy guys, right? Those guys that have the burst and the bend. He's opening that hip, and guys are just pushing him away. He's not using his length to his maximum advantage. And that's something that he can do. If he really learns how to use his length, watch out. Spencer Brown's going to be a phenomenal football player. And one more guy I want to point to that's not in your top 10. But he's not in mine, but he's going to be very close. It's Brady Christensen. Mm-hmm. This is a guy that at the left tackle position, we saw him working that RPO scheme at BYU. This is a guy that is perfect for zone teams in the NFL. Now, I don't love his fit in a man gap scheme, but that's okay because I think if he goes to a zone team, and there are plenty of zone teams that need tackles this year, this is a guy that is going to be phenomenal for them. He's got great footwork, great mobility. I mean, fluid hips, phenomenal ankle flexibility as well. And this is a guy that with his hands, it's so consistent. Every time he fires, it's inside at the same spot. I mean, it's very strikingly consistent, and it makes him, even though he's not the strongest dude out there, even in this draft. This is a guy that has great hip sync, great knee sync, great ability to absorb power, stand there with his balance and body control, and really shut down pass rushers that are both speedy because of his footwork and athleticism and have that power element to their game as well. So Christensen's a guy I really like in those, in those zone schemes. Sorry. And then, I mean, Tevin Jenkins, for me, he's going to be up there. He's just a dude that he kicks butt, man. I mean, he kicks butt, and he definitely has issues to his game. Angles are a big thing for me with him. Sometimes I do wonder. I love that he plays through the whistle and that he plays so hard. I do wonder if that's gonna, bite him with some unnecessary roughness and sportsmanlike conduct at the next level. Maybe got to temper that flair a little bit, but the motor's hot. He's not a great athlete, and that's definitely gonna limit his ceiling a little bit. But this is a dude that's a hard nosed mauler, and he freaking kills guys. I mean, Joseph Osai is going to be a first round draft pick probably, and Tevin Jenkins took his lunch. Jenkins is a dude that can beat power. He against speed rushers, he has a little bit of trouble. Makes me wonder if he flips inside to guard. I think he's going to be a great guard if he flips there. But Jenkins, you can just see this dude's going to be a starter. He has the mentality. He has the power. He has the pad level. Sometimes that's all you need in the NFL to be a really good guard or tackle in a gap scheme. And I think Tevin Jenkins fits that bill really, really crisply.
Right, and that's going to be reflected. Spoiler alert: Tevin Jenkins is extremely high when I kick him into the interior offensive lineman ranking. So I know a lot of people have him top tier in the offensive tackles, but you got to think scouting to assess and then scouting to project are two different things, in my opinion. You scout to assess the talent, right? Assessing it, you're watching the tape, you're watching them versus future doctors, lawyers, gym teachers. It's a lot different than assessing the talent versus NFL level talent and experience. That's one of the things, like you mentioned with Jenkins, is I think that's probably maybe the biggest surprise. I would say Jenkins is that low for me is the athleticism. He is a very fiery player, but that athleticism on the outside, it doesn't bode well at the next level. So, guys, as you can see, top tier evaluation in terms of assessing the athlete and assessing the technical ability from Mr. Farabaugh here. So now we're going to move towards the guards. Let's find these guys. But I love it. I really appreciate that breakdown. And we have just a day later, February 10th, 2021. I'm so glad I put the dates on these things. But almost 2 months ago, let's see where I'm at here. I haven't looked at my guards in a while, to be honest. Landon Dickerson, number 1. David Moore, 2. Trey Smith, 3. Elijah VT, 4. 5. Rashawn Slater, 6. Quinn Miners. And if I butcher names, please correct me because you probably know more than me. Josh Myers, Robert Hainsey, there goes Tevin Jenkins, and Carson Green. And I didn't have the 11 through 30 or 11 through 45 as I'm known to do. But as you know, it's basically predicated on how many guys are drafted within the draft too. A lot of my rankings show that, offensive linemen, there's a certain amount that get taken every year in the draft. And interior players, you have to be very, very good to be taken and considered there. And a lot, when we start transitioning from here, guard to center, a lot of these guys are interchangeable, so it's like the rankings, you're going to see a lot of repeat guys. But without further ado, what do you think about this ranking?
I love that Landon Dickerson is the one. I love that guy. If Dickerson did not have 4 season-ending injuries, we're talking about a guy that is a top 15 player in this class on tape. He's elite. This is a guy that has all pro potential. Like, for every single reason you stated. I think he's a better athlete than people give him credit for. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of lateral movement that worries me, probably because of his injuries a little bit. When he's in space, moving, get to the second level off of those combo blocks. If he has to reach the mic or the will on the backside, he does that pretty well, and he blows them up, man. I mean, this is a guy that went in and went against guys that played for LSU and in Florida and Georgia. And every single time he played them, they were in the dirt. I mean, we saw multiple future NFLers that Dickerson was pounding into the dirt. I mean, Dickerson is elite. I love that ranking. I don't know if I'm going to be as high on him, but I love David Moore too. I love me some David Moore love, man. Guy out of Grambling. I mean, we need to get David Moore. He's this year's Kevin Dotson. That's what I think he is. This year's Kevin Dotson. Just for all the same reasons, he's a pretty underrated athlete, and people will knock him for that because he never got a ton of opportunities to work in space. Like, he just didn't get that much. Usually he was just there pounding dudes and throwing them out of the park, moving forward in those gap schemes. When he was pulling, though, he looked like an absolute truckload just coming for you, and he was going to blow you up. And when you kind of talk about Moore, at least with his footwork, you don't have those deep drops you do at tackle. So all he has to do is move side to side and his quickness, his foot quickness, his lateral agility is phenomenal. And then he plays with really good path level, and it's not easy to see David Moore losing at any level. And when he faced upper tier teams, he was rock solid. Guys weren't beating him, even guys with length. Moore doesn't have great length, and that can be something that does kill him. I mean, a lot of guards don't have great length, but Moore, debilitatingly so. He is a guy that still takes those power moves and he absorbs them with a great anchor, with great body control. And I talk about body control and core strength because I think they're the two most underrated traits that we don't talk about. If you have strength in that ability to weigh down on those power moves and just not give up ground, which Moore does, and you have a lot of ability to win from that interior. And he doesn't overextend at all. Very solid. I think he's probably top 5 guard in the class. Very good football player. I do think Slater, when we look at Slater, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Slater because, he's 9 OT, 5 at guard. I'm interested to see where he is at center. I'm interested to see that if he's on those rankings. I think Slater is a guy that while I think he probably will stay at tackle just because he's a good tackle, he's going to end up being a good tackle. I think he's got a higher ceiling as a guard or a center. I actually like it. I think with his wherewithal, with his balance and body control, because it's just elite, and with how well he moves, I love Rashawn Slater at center. Just because right when you're at center, you're gonna have guys coming off of you right away. You have to absorb those hits right away after you snap the ball. Slater's ability to just absorb that power and the ability to have great hand placement and be so polished as a technician and be a great communicator and be a phenomenal heady player. He's a high IQ football player, recognizing those blitzes. He's a perfect center prospect. Now that's if obviously OT doesn't work out for him. Teams are going to view left tackle more valuable than center. It doesn't matter. That's going to be the NFL will always take I feel like a good left tackle over a great center. Like that's just something. So we might never see Slater there. But I think Slater just has the ability to be a phenomenal interior guy. Now, if he moves there, we'll see. But again, for those traits I mentioned, it's exactly why he could be a phenomenal guard or center. It's also why he's a good tackle. So, I mean, Slater, whatever, you probably play him in all 5 positions. That's why he'll go as high as he did. I love the Robert Hainsey love. I'll tell you that right now. I didn't mention him last time because I figured you would have him pretty high here as well. This is a guy, well, we talk about versatility being everything. This is a guy that's played pretty much all up and down the line, right? He has that length. He has that ability to drive guys off the line of scrimmage. But my thing with Hainsey is, and we don't see this a lot in guards because it's usually a tackle thing. Just how aggressive he is in getting up on guys. Like his sets as a guard when he's played inside are that of like a vertical set on a tackle. He gets his hands on you and he doesn't even give up ground sometimes in pass pro because he's so strong. He's got great hands, and he's not he's not like Quinn Miners strong or when those guys will just throw guys around or Tevin Jenkins. But I mean, he's strong. I mean, he's sturdy. Like he doesn't move a lot. He's not going to move you either which way. He just doesn't give up ground. And as a lineman, I think we kind of romanticize the pancake block. Yes, we love seeing those pancake blocks. But Hainsey, you're not going to hear his name often. You're just not. As a fan, the only time you're going to hear Robert Hainsey's name is, well, oh, he just cleared that hole. He just got a little bit of movement. He cleared that hole. It's really, really what he does. Laterally, I think he moves very, very well. Just as a pure guard when he's pulling in space, great job to hit the kickouts on ends. I think he's got great ability to down block as well. And when he works combo blocks, it's beautiful hip to hip. Shoulder to shoulder, does that at a high level. Highly intelligent as a blocker as well. Does a lot of really good things well. I think Hainsey's going to be a guy that we look back on. Maybe he doesn't get that starting job from day one because I don't know where he's going to get drafted. I feel like he's underrated from what at least we're hearing right now in terms of Hainsey. That's a guy that should probably go day two, but he'll be a starter, I think, in the NFL because he is so savvy at what he does. I am interested to see one guy. Can you scroll up real quick? I don't know if you have him on here because I'm going to ask you about this guy. You don't have Wyatt Davis. I find that interesting.
Yeah. If I were to include the 11 through 20, he'd probably be in that ranking. I think I include him in center. I think we'll have to see on that.
Interesting.
I'm big on him. I think he's an athlete, and that's one thing that I know is the guy can move. And when you talk about just the simplistic viewpoint of the traits and tools, he has it. Reason why he's not in the top 10 is probably more so due to injury, technical. But what do you think about Wyatt?
Yeah, Wyatt Davis is a guy that I think I love his attitude and I love his appetite for contact and physicality. Great strength. Again, this dude throws guys out of the club. He's a phenomenal people mover. But he's a great athlete, as you mentioned. That's maybe his chief trait, just his mobility in the open field and space, his ability to really just move laterally. I think it's phenomenal. And I think he's got great body control. I think he's got great power behind his pads, behind his hands. And I think he really uses his lower body well to drive that power through his lower body and convert that through his hands. Now, the thing with Wyatt Davis is this is a guy that I think his competitive nature, and we talked about this a little bit with Tevin Jenkins, but this is more so in a different level. I think he almost is too aggressive, right? I mean, sometimes there is a thing as being too aggressive. And with Davis, it manifests itself on being too eager to get on guys right away. Especially at the second level, he just misses blocks a lot of the time because he lunges. And the thing you don't want to do is lunge. I don't care. You never want to be bent over forward as an offensive line. That is the last thing you want because he lunges too much. And I feel like he's trying to hit the big block instead of just block the guy. And overextending like that, also in pass pro, it just lets guys go swim move like that. And that's the thing with Wyatt Davis. Now, I have Wyatt Davis in my top 10 because I think the physical tools are there. I think this is a guy that has the ability to be a really good player. But you have this aggressiveness that is almost counterintuitive to him, and you almost see him leave his feet sometimes. And it's a guy that he ends up on the ground too much. And listen, there's a good time to be on the ground as a lineman. It's when the other guy's on the ground with you. And Davis ends up on the ground by himself too often. And he gets his running back killed sometimes. He gets his quarterback hit too many times because of that aggressiveness, that antsiness. And that's something that I think he needs to improve on big time. Now, obviously, he was injured a little bit, suffered an injury, I think was either the Big Ten championship or before then. But he's a guy that really needs to train at that, really play under control, let himself come back to earth a little bit. And if he can do that, I think Wyatt Davis has a chance to be a really good guard, a very good guard at the NFL level. It's just playing like that because if he keeps doing that, the quarterback's going to get killed 2 or 3 times a game. Well, you're not going to get much playing time unless you're on a roster. Obviously, that's just bare bones.
Well, I have to go back and review a little bit more Wyatt Davis tape, and because I trust your opinion, and that's why we have Nick on. What I really love is about what I really love about his evaluation process and the explanation was an example with Hainsey when he mentioned that I think we over glamorize that offensive linemen are just out there just being brutes and just destroying people every play. When the reality is, like you said, guys like Hainsey are the guys that the subtlety to their game. They're not going to necessarily just overpower someone. They're going to be the reason a 4-yard gain is a 25-yard gain because of how they position themselves, just getting the hand on the guy, attacking a defensive tackle's hips instead of maybe coming in too high. That technical ability of these players really do make the difference. When people talk about the details, this is a position that covets that, and really love that breakdown. But I do have to return to another guy in David Moore that, like I said, I did this February 10th, released these rankings, and I mentioned him not having much arm length. His pro day actually showed the contrary. He has long arms, as far as measurement. But when you look at a guy that, these aren't official because 6'2", 350, the way that he's built so compact, it doesn't necessarily look like he has long arms. And that's the thing. Maybe he doesn't use them as well either. So I do have to make that disclaimer. By measurement, he does have length, but it depends on how he uses it. But back to Moore, I don't think anyone's really talking about him being this high. This guy is a physical brute. He was like bullying people. I remember a rep against Carlos Basham, who's, highly respected in this draft class, talked about being, as good as Justin Houston. So if you're that good, David Moore had him on clamps. He couldn't even get out of his grip. And I think that's one of the biggest traits for David Moore. But let's move on to the centers. And then we have the tight ends after that. Can't wait to get to this center. See what you have to say about the centers here.
Very interesting. There are a few guys here that at the center position I'm hoping to see pretty high because I like a few under the radar centers, if you will.
Let me see. Okay. We got David Moore, number one. Told you I like David Moore. 2, Landon Dickerson. Quinn Miners. Creed. Josh Myers. James Morrissey. Trey Hill. There goes Wyatt. Brennan. Hymas.
Okay.
Jason,
okay.
Drake Jackson. What do you think about these guys?
All right. So one guy I'm going to point out that's not even in your top 10, that's in my top 5, because I love this guy. Kendrick Green from Illinois. This is a dude that should be shoot to the rocket moon. This dude is going to be a really good football player. A zone scheme blocker first. What a phenomenal movement skills. Just a natural. He's a freak mover for the center position. And this was a dude that was a defensive tackle before being an offensive line. So he understands everything. He's got great feet. He's got, most importantly, this is the thing with Moore, and not with Moore as well. With Green, it's not just that they are quick; it's with how good their timing is and how consistent it is. Because when they're not too overzealous, they're not too aggressive. We talked about that with Wyatt Davis. It's not just about placement. It's not just about consistency with placement. It's also about timing. So he's not going to overextend much. He's not going to alligator arm it so the guy, can just bowl him over like this. He's going to be extended like this, perfect grip strength. He's in a great position. He's not going to give up any ground because he has that great body control. He has a good anchor. He has good strength. He's got great punch timing. He's got good power behind that punch, and the placement is consistent. That's what Kendrick Green does at a high level. And that's very translatable to the NFL because all the best centers in the NFL have that. They have that great punch timing. And at center, especially, if you don't have this punch timing down and you're overextending as a center and the nose is going to get by you, well, you're either going to get your quarterback killed or you're going to get your running back killed. So you don't want to do that. Also, I love how Kendrick Green uses his hips. We haven't talked a lot about hips outside of mobility. You can use your hips as movers. This is a way you have to move the defensive lineman's hips, obviously, but if you can flip your hips and drive through your hips and use that as a maneuvering tool, which is what Green does, he uses his hips well to change direction and get guys to move and really sustain his power. It's a base of power for him, and that's something that Green does really high level. So I really like Green in that area. Now something I do kind of worry about with Green is that I'm not sure how great his overall anchor is. So while he has those areas of, I think, pretty solid body control, great hand placement, he does sometimes lose to bull rushers just because I don't think he has great strength overall, and I think he needs to improve that and improve his anchoring ability, improve his knee bend through that. But I think he's got some really good ability with his upper half that shows up. And also, he was a former wrestler, so the hands come from somewhere. Creed Humphrey also was a former wrestler, and you see that. I think Creed Humphrey, outside of if we eliminate if we have the Landon Dickerson injuries, because Landon Dickerson's also my top center. I think Creed Humphrey is probably my two. And I know that's kind of the consensus. So I know I promised a little bit of different consensus here on the top two centers. I'm in lockstep with most people, just because. Listen, I don't go into an evaluation looking to be contrarian. I just don't. If it lines up, it lines up. Creed Humphrey was just so solid, and then he went out and tested like an absolute monster at his pro day. I mean, he tested as literally, I'm not kidding, the most athletic center of all time, like going back 1990 something.
Wow.
Like Creed Humphrey was a crazy athletic football player, and yes, athletic abilities and everything, especially at center position. But Humphrey was probably the most cerebral player I watched at offensive line this draft cycle. I think he's the smartest. He might be the smartest football player in the draft, legitimately. His instincts, his ability to read fronts, his ability to communicate, his eyes, just elite, dude. I mean, elite. This is a guy that could step into an NFL locker room right now and you would pen him in as your starter. He's so good. And then when you look at him turning opponents, when we talk about turning opponents with his hips and with his hands, he does that well. There's just not a lot to poke holes in at Creed Humphrey's game. He kind of has everything. He has a little bit of limitations. He might not be the strongest dude out there. He's not going to pancake a ton of guys, but he's going to control the line of scrimmage. He's going to control the point of attack. He's got great hands, great feet. He can move in space really well. Creed Humphrey pretty much is everything. And he's scheme diverse. And again, those smarts are just huge. Those smarts are phenomenal. They're outstanding. So Creed Humphrey's my two. Now, some guy that I'll cape for, first of all, love the Quinn Meinerz placement. Love Jimmy Morrissey up there that high as well. Jimmy Morrissey. I'm a Pitt guy. I've watched Jimmy Morrissey play. That dude is a former walk-on that has worked for this at every level. He definitely has that aggressiveness to get up there and stall guys in pass protection. But someone I really want to point to as, in my opinion, a pretty underrated guy is Michael Manet out of Penn State. This is a guy that I don't want to hear a ton about him, but he's a guy that is super smooth, just very easy, light mover on his feet for his size. He shouldn't be able to move as well as he does, and he gets out in space because of that at a high level. Whether you watch this guy block out in front of his running back on a screen, and you'll see what I mean. His movement skills in the open field to be a lead blocker and spring these big plays at the second level is second to none in this class. He's phenomenal at it. I feel like also when you look at Manet, this is a guy that plays with phenomenal pad level. You hear the adage, obviously, low man wins a lot. It's very true. Manet's 6'3", so he's a guy that's going to have that natural pad level ability. And while I don't think he has phenomenal leg drive or or even I don't even think he has great play strength to move a ton of guys, and that's why he'll end up lower. Because again, he does lose that point of attack sometimes, just because he just doesn't have the strength. And probably needs to hit the weight room a little bit and kind of beef up a little bit. Maybe lose a few pounds of fat and kind of transform that body into a more chiseled body. And especially in the legs, the lower body, it's his lower half that I think when he tries to anchor down, sometimes it can get him. But that ability to move in space, that contact balance, that ability to just play with great pad level, and more importantly, to be on time with everything, to have great punch timing, to have all that stuff right. Michael Monet, definitely one of my favorites. Definitely a top 10 guy in this class. And then I'll throw out one more name that's not on here. Drew Dahlman out of Stanford. I really like Drew Dahlman out of Stanford as well. So this is a guy that, for me, I mean, I think Dahlman is very smart as well. I think he's got a very high football IQ, and it's at center. Listen, center is a cerebral position. So if you can't read the defense, read these different fronts, read where the stunt come from, or what you're seeing on tape, you're not going to survive at center in the National Football League. It's just the fact of the matter. And Dahlman has these high smarts, and I think for him, he's a phenomenal processor. Now he doesn't have great strength, but he's going to be good in his own scheme. Like I definitely think he can go to a team like the Rams, a team like the 49ers, the Jets, some team like that, a wide zone team that you really don't need a ton of strength in. You just need to have good grip strength, good hand placement, be cerebral, to be steady and pass pro, and not lose a ton of ground. I think Dahlman's that. He's just the definition of solid. You're not going to point out his name a ton because he's not going to get a ton of praise. He's going to be one of those quiet guys that's just a leader behind the scenes and does what he's asked. And I think that's what Dahlman does at a really high level. Yes, he can improve a little bit. He's kind of capped. He doesn't have a super high ceiling. He can be a top 15 tackle. And for his own scheme team, I mean, Dahlman's a guy that you can look at and say, well, he'll be my starter for a decade. And I really like Dahlman. I like his cerebral ability, and I really like what he does on the technical side of things. So that's kind of my thing. Also, shout out to giving Trey Hill some love. That dude's a mauler, straight up mauler, and he runs train on some guys. Not a great athlete, but man, if he's not a people mover, I've never seen one before. So Trey Hill, I appreciate that guy's game. I think he's much better than people give him credit for. That's what I'll say.
Absolutely. There were a few great points talking about centers. One was, in general, talking about the scouting process to start, is not going into an evaluation process trying to be a contrarian. Because I think a lot of people do that for clicks, especially, I'm not going to mention any names in the higher ranking draft analyst type of people. But yeah, you have, for those young guys out there, or just a reminder for veterans, definitely don't go in trying to say, I'm going to say this to, definitely do your due diligence. Some of these guys is just based off of, maybe I like their, personality, or, and you have those types of things. I like his grit. I like his grit over this guy, or I saw some reps at a certain, in a certain game situation, or at an all-star game that really just bumped somebody ahead. Another thing is, Nick mentioned the IQ of these centers, and I thought about that in a lot of these positions. Is you have to be a smart guy. You are the leader of that offensive line, and you're the leader of protecting the CEO of the offense, which is the quarterback. And you gotta be pretty sharp. And then a theme that I think that will be a big theme with every position that involves the terms man and zone, even on defense, is a lot of times in my past, I've always missed on guys who may be better. This is talking about defensive backs because that's where I played, is I miss on guys who may be better zone than man. Because in zone, that concept in general makes up for athletic limitations. Like you mentioned with, who was the last guy you just mentioned before?
Trey Hill, yeah.
Before Trey Hill.
Drew Dahlman.
So a Dahlman guy, probably why he's not in my top 10, but I remember his name is, that same thing. If you can't hold your own in a man scheme, or even, both, then I I subconsciously might move you down because I know that's your athletic limitations somewhere or size somewhere. But Judalman is a perfect example of a guy that you don't want to write off because he might not be very strong or a man guy, but he's very good in zone. So Nick would be a good guy like for the Rams or the Jets when he's in that draft room. Nick will be a guy that might find a late round sleeper or a mid round sleeper because he understands that. That is a very like people don't understand that's a very high quality evaluation skill, in my opinion, to know that difference. Um, but yeah, that's what we got him on. And we're gonna keep him on. When he gets his broadcasting job, he's gonna say some good words for me.
I will put in the good word. Don't worry.
Don't worry. We're gonna keep that. No, but in all seriousness, that is high level evaluation. Without further ado, we're gonna move to the tight ends. Before we move to the tight ends, I want to ask Nick something on the technical side of the presentation. Do you see the screen like shaking a little bit, or is that just on my?
No, it's pretty stable overall. So it's stable.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
So I want to make sure that that's just on my side. It might be because of might need to get a fan going in here. But anyway, if everybody can see it very clearly, this is the 2021 Prospect Rankings Tight End Edition. It almost feels like a breath of fresh air. We talked about the mean man, the trenches, but like Nick said, tight ends are like the cousins of the offensive linemen. They're an extension of those guys. February 27th was when this was released. Obviously, Kyle Pitts. I mean, come on.
He might man. No doubt.
Be the best athlete I've seen in quite some time. I'm not going to go overboard, but he's absolutely phenomenal.
Might be the best player in the draft. Period.
Absolutely. You got Brevin Jordan at 2, Trey McKitty at 3, Hunter Long 4, Pat Freiermuth at 5, John Bates 6, Tommy Trimble 7, Sean Byer 8, Noah Gray 9, Kenny Yeboah 10, and then you see Bushman, Nick Eubanks, Daniel Crawford. A lot of these guys. The thing with rankings are sometimes like it's tiered. It's not necessarily linear. So, for example, somebody that I'm higher on, like Zach Davidson, for example, he's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's some very, like if he was a flex, if I'm talking about flex tight ends, if I would differentiate that, he'd be very high on my flex tight end list. But I'm just doing this linearly. But without further ado, how do you feel about this ranking, these rankings, these guys in general? And let's get that eval.
Listen, we have decently similar lists. I'll say that. I definitely see Pitts. Obviously, is the number one. Brevin Jordan scared me a little bit. I'll say this. He is my tight end too. But his testing, and I know testing's not everything, right? It's not everything, but it matters. Like there's a historical correlation to it. I can't deny it. Jordan didn't test as well as I thought he would. And I thought, oh, he's Jonnu Smith. He's going to be a mismatch. He's a guy that I can get into space. And yeah, he has great yak skill. And I think that's something that is pretty much like, the big thing with Brevin Jordan is, well, how easily he breaks tackles in space and how dynamic he is after the catch. He's almost like a receiver, but then you look at his tape in contested situations and you're like, well, why the heck didn't he consistently make those plays? It's worrying. He doesn't have great catch technique because he's a bit of a body catcher instead of going outside of his frame. That worries me a lot. And when I look at him, I mean, I don't think he's as bad of a blocker as people think he is. I think he's a solid blocker. He loses slowly. Well, that's the thing. When you're a tight end, I want you to lose slowly. I don't care if you can block dudes out of the club. There are a few guys that can do it in the NFL. Kittle, Lee Smith, specific blockers. Nick Boyle. Thinking of guys like that, that are phenomenal blockers. But you don't have to be. Brevin Jordan's decent enough. I'm cool with it. But the testing scared me because, that's a guy I thought was going to be the athletic mismatch. I'd get him into space. And that's where he'd win. I mean, that's how he wins, is how his athleticism, his body control, his contact balance. It's not through physicality, really. It's not through being bigger. It's not through that. So that scares me. And the comp I had was also John. So I agree with that. My worry is he's a less athletic John, and I don't know what that looks like. That scares me. Is that a bust? Is that, is that a tight end too? What does a less athletic John look like? I don't know. So that scares me a little bit, but he is my two. But I just wanted to bring that up on Brevin Jordan because I think he's an interesting val. I definitely think he's a guy we haven't really seen a lot of types of guys like Brevin Jordan come out. So he's very interesting to me. Love the Trey McKitty love. Love, love, love it. I think he's a phenomenal blocker. I think he showed it at the SEC level this year. Guy has phenomenal hand placement, plays with an edge to his game that I love as a tight end. He relishes in blocking. Like, that's what I love. I love my tight ends that relish in blocking. I think Trey McKitty does relish that. But then again, the thing with McKitty is I think this is a guy that you can play inline, you can split out wide, and still be an effective receiver. I don't know if he's an elite athlete. I don't know if he is. But he's got phenomenal hands. I mean, he just doesn't drop anything. Watch that Senior Bowl tape and see what I mean. His Senior Bowl tape was phenomenal, especially in that receiving end. And he's got a very wide route tree, so I know I can play him out wide. I know I can play him inside. I don't think I have him at tight end 3, but I definitely see where McKitty kind of fits in as a versatile guy that does a little bit of both. And as a tight end, you also look for good change of direction because change of direction is kind of the thing with tight ends, right? You're pulling in space, you're cutting with your route stems or whatever. And McKitty does those both well. I think he's a pretty fluid athlete from side to side. One guy I will throw out, he is a little bit low on the list for you, considering me, Tommy Tremble, man. I've been a Tommy Tremble fan for a long, long time. And again, maybe it's just because I love those guys that are blockers at tight end. This dude, this dude on tape destroys people. I mean, you want to talk about an elite blocking tight end coming out. Tremble's the best blocking tight end in this class. It's not even close. He's a phenomenal guy that destroys people, has great hands, great power, great leg drive, can play fullback, can play H-back, can play inline, can split them out wide. He's a very versatile player. He's a mismatched weapon. And I think when you looked at what he did as a receiver, and especially because he's an underrated athlete and he wasn't used, Notre Dame misused Tommy Tremble. They used him as a primary blocker. This dude has so much receiving upside that was untapped there, man. He's physical when he goes up to the catch point. He high points that football really well. His releases off the line of scrimmage were like super nuanced, and how he would set up these cornerbacks to flip their hips to the outside and then cut in or do the opposite of that. He's a guy that has very, very good ability at the line of scrimmage. And he has no problem being physical at the catch point. In between his route breaks, he'll separate through that. I mean, even when you get him in space, he can break a lot of these tackles, and then he'll lower his shoulder. He's a dog, man. The definition of one. I love Tommy Tremble. That guy's a top 5 tight end for me in this class. I really, really like Tommy Tremble. I really appreciate the John Bates shout out. I think he's a good football player. I'll tell you who else that I do like. Because I kind of like these tight ends that are kind of former basketball players that I think a lot of these guys, Pro Wells out of TCU, he's a guy that really fits in quite nicely, I think, as just he's not a great blocker, right? Like, he's not. And this is kind of weird how I like Pro Wells, because I just said I love blocking tight ends. He's really not a blocker. He's kind of a pure receiver. If you play him in line, you gotta kind of hide him. But Wells is a dude that was just he's a machine, man. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that can accelerate through his stems and explode out of his breaks. This guy hits another turbo button out of those. He has great burst, short area burst, and can just separate through that alone. And then at the catch point, obviously he's a basketball player. He's going to win every contested catch ball. He's going to high point that thing. He's going to bring it in. I love Pro Wells because he can do that. Now, he's not super physical. He needs to become more detailed in most things. He's pretty new to the game of football, so he needs to learn how to read coverages, find soft spot in zones, be that check down option. But I think he's got good hands. I think he's got the ability to win at the catch point really well, and I think he's got the athletic tools to be much better than he was in college, because I think he's just learning the position right now. Again, so I really like what Pro brings to the table on that end. I'll throw out a name that you do have on here that is a little bit lower for you, and it's Quentin Morris out of Bowling Green. This is a guy who just has every. You ask offensive coaches, what do I want? What do they want in a tight end, right? They want a mismatch weapon. That's one of the big things. Quentin Morris, while he is raw, he's not a great route runner. This is a guy that is a mismatch weapon. He is much, much, much too good of a mover for his size. He should not be able to move as well as he does. He'll make your slot corner look silly. He'll dominate your linebacker. And then when he goes up against a boundary corner, he just is more physical than him. He's pro Wells if he had more want in his game. This is a guy that does like to get dirty and grimy. And now he's not a great blocker, as I said before. I don't love him as a blocker, but if I can put him out there as a Y, as a flex type guy, I'll take Quentin Morris from the slot all day. I'll put him out wide throw. I hate saying this. I will trust Quentin Morris to go up and get a fade in the end zone. I will trust him that. Quentin Morris has that ability. He has this athleticism ability, this change of direction, this suddenness to this game, and he is smart. He's super smart. He knows how to read coverages and find those soft spots and zones. He's a great check down option. He's a safety blanket. So I think this is a guy you can use as a mismatch weapon at the next level. I like Quentin Morris a good deal. And then one more guy I do want to talk about, Sean Bayer. You have him up there at 8. He's, other than just being an Iowa tight end, who obviously Iowa's the tight end factory now. He's not like a Hawkinson or a Fant, right? He's not the super athletic receiver. But I think Bayer is a guy that, when you look at his blocking ability, one of the best blockers at the tight end position. Super, super good hands, great pad level. This is a guy, we talked about the hips earlier with the lineman. Talk about clearing out gaps and positioning his hips to clear them out. This is a guy that seals off that front side block a ton, especially when Iowa went into down blocks and he was able to just turn them and push them out a little bit. He was great at sealing off those edges. He was often the end man on the line of scrimmage for Iowa. And that just means, when they're running off tackle, he's the guy he's the seal guy. Like if Bayer is not sealing that block, if the play's done, unless our running back, we trust him to have enough burst and have enough moves to break that tackle. And ideally, you want your running back to just hit the hole and go, right? And get a one-on-one opportunity in the alley. So Baker was able to do that really well. And I think he's a great tight end too. Now, I don't know if he's ever going to be a starter. Again, I don't know if he's going to be a great receiver. He's a limited athlete. But this is a guy that I just think is such a phenomenal blocker. You're going to see him in opportunities, in 12 personnel opportunities. I really like Bayer as a guy that can really separate himself from the pack a little bit in that area.
Absolutely. And as you can see, guys, you get that eval and intel from a protection standpoint, a blocking standpoint, because these guys are an extension of the offensive line. So you get that from Nick there. And you also get guys like, this is why we're doing it. A little bit lower on Trimble. One of the reasons to just, justify that low rankings. Love his character, as I mentioned here. Maximum effort blocker, super long. And, I have Fleener here, if those that remember, is that long guy that can attack the seams, middle of the field. I just see Trimble being that type of guy at the next level as a receiving option. I think there's great upside there from a receiving position. We didn't even mention, Fryermuth, who is very high on a lot of people's boards. Baby Gronk, which I think is egregious. I mean, you got to think this guy has terrorized the league. Look at his name, Rob Gronk. This guy's terrorized the league for years, and I think sometimes we just hop on comps a little bit too soon. He's more of a CJ Uzoma type of guy to me, and I know you know him very well, being in that AFC North. I feel like him at his best. I think the great Greg Cosell had him as a more of a Heath Miller, right? Comp.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love his 2019 tape. You see where people are getting that or drawing that comparison, but I just don't see it, grand scale as a baby Gronk comparison. Another guy we didn't mention or talk about was Zach Davison, who, for me, I don't know if you do this, but like you said, the measurement aspect of things, the testing, I try to look at every year who are the top guys in the league, right? In the NFL. And I try to find who in the draft kind of have that testing, in combination with the play style, who can be the next so and so. So if you look at the tight end position, who are the top tight ends in the league? Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, guys like that stand out. So I'm trying to find the next those guys. I'm trying to expedite all of that. That's another part of my evaluation process where I'm trying to find unicorns. I'm trying to find the surefire things. And doing practices like that, it helps me not have guys fall through the cracks because I'm trying to be 100% when I'm evaluating. So guys that have that same height, weight. Okay, what did Travis Kelce run? What was Travis Kelce's 40 or his height, weight? And I try to find that. And I look at a guy like Zach Davison, and I see a player that's very, very similar in terms of testing, body type. This guy is very well-rounded. Basketball background. He can even punt. He's from a smaller school, and I think it eludes me. I think it's Southeast Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is.
And he's a guy that I think that, you get these type of athletes that you have some reservations on their blocking ability, especially at the lower level. How strong was their weight program like? But outside of that, I think he's just an athletic guy that can go up and pluck the ball, has exceptional route running ability. And, one of the things you want to look at tight ends because of how they're running in route running in general, at the top of your stem, how do you separate? And Zach Davison does that consistently on tape. He's a red zone target, and I really like his game. And before we kind of wrap this up, I do want to get your opinion on two more guys, because I think this tight end class is going to be one that, not many tight ends are taken every year. I think they're one of the lower positions to be taken overall. And I think there will be a lot of variation in tiers that are going to throw a lot of evaluators off. What do you think about Kenny Yeboah, and if you've watched Matt Bushman, those two guys? So 10 and 11, Yeboah and Bushman. How do you feel about those guys?
Yeah, so Yeboah, he's interesting to me. Kenny Yeboah is a top 10 guy in my opinion as well. Mm-hmm. And you kind of look at it, and when you saw him in that Lane Kiffin ability, in that scheme, you saw him be a versatile guy that can move inside, outside, and as a blocker, I feel like when people look at athletic tight ends that are great receivers, look at Kyle Pitts, they immediately think bad blocker. Pitts is not a bad blocker. Kyle Pitts is a fine blocker. I think Yeboah is kind of the same way. I think Yeboah is a pretty underrated blocker. Now, that doesn't mean he's elite. He's definitely not elite by any means as a blocker, but I think he's serviceable because I think he has pretty decent hand movement. I think more importantly with Yeboah, you talk about grit, you talk about want, you're not going to outwant Kenny Yeboah in a blocking situation. He's going to try his hardest, and he's improving on his technique. You can tell he wants to. So I have no problems expecting him to hit the sled by the time, training camp rolls around and improving as a blocker. Kenny Yeboah, phenomenal blocker, but his main appeal is obviously the athleticism that you can use him as a receiver, right? Like that's where we talk about Yeboah, and you put him against linebackers and he can stretch the field vertically through the seam and he can really split the field safeties in a cover two scheme. This is a guy that has home run ability. Legitimately, he can take it to the house. He's got that long speed that few tight ends really have, and he's super tough. I feel like he's a guy that maybe doesn't, similar to Brevin Jordan, he doesn't have a great ability to win at the catch point in contested situations, so I don't love that. I think he plays a little smaller than he actually is at the catch point. And again, when he kind of contorts his body to try to get those contested catches, I feel like he does it awkwardly. I'm not sure exactly if that's ball tracking or what it is. It might be ball tracking. That's my best guess on it. Right now, he doesn't always put himself in the best spot to win those jump balls. And again, he's a body catcher, so he alligator arms some of these catches as well, which worries me. But he can separate really well at the top of the stems, as you talked about, in and out of his breaks when he's running in breaking routes and out breaking routes, especially. So I think you use him in the intermediate game. I think you use him as a field stretcher up the seam, and just use his athleticism to get him open, right? And I think you have a guy in Kenny Yeboah who can be a pretty productive tight end too in the NFL. I don't know if he'll be the guy, but he could start a few games for you if your main guy goes down. And definitely, he's the perfect 12 personnel guy, the growing 12 personnel in the NFL. I think Yeboah fits in very nicely there. Bushman's interesting. First of all, he's older and he's coming off a torn Achilles. Now, I'm not a huge age guy, but it does matter, right? So he's probably capped out. And the torn Achilles, man, I mean, Achilles injuries scare me. I don't care. That saps your athleticism sometimes. But Bushman is a guy that prior to the season was definitely in my top 10 list because I thought, contrary to Yeboah and Jordan that we talked about, I think Bushman goes up and he wins those balls almost all the time, especially in contested situations. I think this is a guy that maybe doesn't have the elite ability or the elite explosiveness or the elite vert. He doesn't have elite jumping skills. He's a guy that just is super solid, puts himself in the right position, has great body control, has great ability to win on the sideline, tap those toes, whatever, spin and toe tap, whatever he does. Great body control, and I think he looks bigger and he plays with a physicality, but I think he has some finesse in that game. His feet are pretty quick overall. When he moves laterally, I think he's pretty smooth for his size. So he's a pretty decent route runner overall. I really like Matt Bushman in that area as a blocker. Again, pretty solid. I don't know. Again, I don't know if he's going to be a tight end one in the NFL, but sleeper day 3, taking a flyer on a Matt Bushman, I think it makes a little too much sense. So yeah, Bushman is there as long as the torn Achilles and he heals nicely from it. I think Bushman, again, he's older, so I don't know how much longer he'll play in the NFL, but I think he can be a pretty solid guy and play a good bit in the NFL over the next decade.
Thanks for that breakdown. Because I really needed to get that kind of, these last tier guys. Because if I'm looking at how I was going to do it, I kind of look at it. Okay, if I got a top 10 list, 1 through 2 or 3, well, 1 through 3 or 4 is kind of that first tier. 4 through 6, second, 7 through 10, or however, 3, 3, 4, or 4, 3, 3. That's kind of how I tier it. And I'm like, these last tier 3 guys going into tier 4, I don't know where they kind of stack. And I appreciate that breakdown. Now, for those that don't know, me and Nick kind of did a collab during the season when the Tennessee Titans and Steelers matched up. And I think we did this off camera, just talked about, certain traits that kind of your trick of the trade over the years of what kind of helps you get your evals correct. We can share that now on recorded episode, but for me, I'll share mine first.
I mean,
yeah, you want to go?
No, you can go, man. Go for it.
So with the offensive lineman, if you're willing to share the tricks of the trade, for me, a kind of tricks of the trade thing is how a lineman is built says a lot for me. Like I look at how the weight is distributed and just think about how that applies to the dexterity and play strength of the position. Every position is different. I like my guys to be, big guys are built very differently. Some are lean, some don't seem like they squat at all. They have these saggy britches, but big, a guy like Cleveland from Georgia, he kind of pops up in my mind. And I feel like there's a certain build and weight distribution that the more balanced you are, and this is probably common knowledge, but the more balanced you are, the better the likelihood of you being good. And obviously pair that with tape study and things like that. As far as tight end, like I said, I do that very often every year. The league kind of updates what wins in the league, tight ends. I look at who, like Travis Kelce, for instance. Like I'm sure when the Steelers play the Chiefs, I'm going to say Travis Kelce scares. He's very intimidating. If I was a defensive coordinator, he'd be a guy that I would be like, I have to shut him down. And the Titans playing the Chiefs so often in these past few years. He's been a guy that's just been tough to deal with in general. And I look for guys. Okay, if I want to have one of those guys on my team, I got to find out how Travis Kelce does that. So I study how he kind of plays and what works in the NFL, and I try to duplicate that because why not? So those are some of the things in the process. Just sharing that. What are some things that you go through, Nick, as far as checklists? What does an offensive lineman have to have? What does a tight end have to have?
So as far as linemen, I mean, one thing I've always noticed with linemen, if they improve from their freshman to sophomore to junior, then maybe senior year, you can almost bet that O lineman's going to be a really good player. Because O lineman's a position where, while the natural gifts obviously matter, if you can be a fantastic technical guy, right? Like a Liam Eichenberg is not a great athlete, but he's a phenomenal technical guy. He's a very technical, cerebral tackle. And when you kind of look at a guy like him, well, he did that all through hard work, and he improved over his time in Notre Dame. Christian Darrisaw, again, improving. So just look at that pattern of improvement. What did he improve upon? Second, know some techniques, right? Like that snatch trap. There are a ton of techniques. Does he mix up his sets really well? Does he have the great eyes? These really advanced things like a Penei Sewell. Again, this is a guy that just has super advanced things in the techniques he uses. He uses so many different techniques. He splits up all these different sets. If a guy does that at a high level and he's in college, he's a good pro. I mean, it's pretty simple. And then obviously athleticism matters. I think explosiveness and lateral agility moves. So no one cares about a 40 time for a lineman. Come on. No one cares, right? Strength does matter, but not as much depending on his athleticism and kind of how he works and within that. But my main trick is, well, it's this pad level. Like pad level is huge at the point of attack because if you're lower, if you have your hands inside, you're going to get movement, man. It's pretty much that simple. Or you're not going to lose ground at the very least. So pad level is huge. It can't be understated. That's the first thing that every lineman coach hammers home. I want you to play low. I want you to be the low man. Can you do that? You can do that. That's how you win. And then at center, you have to have the high football IQ. Like you have to be cerebral at center. And that's a center only thing. Like, yes, it matters at tackle and guard, but if you ain't cerebral and smart at center, you're not going to survive in the NFL. So you have to be smart and recognize these fronts, recognize these blitzes, all these different looks in the NFL. So you have to be able to do that as a center. Now, at tight end, first of all, the tight end position has changed. While they are a cousin of the offensive line, they're also a cousin of the receiver. And they're growing closer to a receiver by the day. So listen, if they're a bad blocker, it's not the end of the world. It's not. That's the mindset I go in with my tight ends. First of all, if they are a great blocker, now that's nice. That's nice, and that helps them. So my thing is with tight ends, do they lose slowly in blocking? That's one of the things. I don't need them to move a ton of guys. They can lose reps. Like unlike offensive linemen, tight ends can lose reps. They can, because they're tight ends, right? And you're unfortunately just with the nature of the game. We've seen this happen before, where a tight end gets matched up with like TJ Watt, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Von Miller, someone like that. It happens every now and then. Chase Young, something like that, right? Can they just stand there and lose slowly and give my quarterback some time to get the ball out and not get crushed? Yes, if they can do that, good. That's all I need. I don't need them to put guys on the ground. I love what Tommy Tremble does, but again, he doesn't need to do that. It's nice to have an elite blocking tight end. They offer different things, but you don't need it. You don't need it. As I'd like them to play to their size, physicality, catch point, all this stuff. If they can play their size, they're much higher on the board for me usually. Because as a tight end, you're supposed to be a mismatch weapon. And part of that mismatch weapon is I can throw you a 50-50 ball and turn that to at least a 70-30. And that's why, part of why Kyle Pitts is obviously so good is because while he separates at a freakish level too for his size, when he is in those 50-50 situations, it's more like a 90-10 because Kyle Pitts ain't dropping that football. So that's something that I look for. And then the last one that I really look for, personally, it's lateral movement ability. Because one, you need lateral movement ability to block. Two, in and out of your breaks and at the top of your stems, how do you snap that? Or do you have the snap in those routes? Can you separate with some explosiveness and quickness when you're cutting? And then obviously in the open field as well. If you're a seam buster, can you hit the house call? Can you force a few guys to miss? Can you boogie a little bit? I know you might be 6'6", 6'5", and that's not, you're not always going to be the most fleet of foot, like the 6'5'11" receiver counterparts. But can you do it a little bit? And are you smooth? Are you not a limited athlete lateral? So that's kind of what I look for in my tight ends, and that's kind of my trick of the trade.
Appreciate that, because not many people share those. Some people keep it close to the chest, but at the end of the day, I mean, more and more I've noticed since I've had like Twitter, just being exposed to the evaluation process, is your tricks of the trade is someone else's more than likely. There are no more sleepers. Another thing that I've noticed, there aren't sleepers. Maybe there's some guys that are more underrated, but there really aren't sleepers anymore these days. But man, I really appreciate you hopping on. Very, in this profession, it's kind of like a brotherhood because we're obviously so busy in other things. You really have to have a lot of passion for this, and I respect your passion. And regardless of networking, it's really I'm genuinely invested and looking forward to what you have in store, Mr. Farabaugh, Mr. Farabaugh football. That is, I told you that's a good combo of names there. But thanks for hopping on, giving us the knowledge on offensive linemen and the tight end position. Look forward to adding more guys on, talk about several different positions. But for today, thanks, Nick. You got any closing words?
Man, I mean, just thanks for having me on. This is a great discussion. Again, it's always nice being on here with you, man, because you always have like different perspectives than most guys, and I love different perspectives. I do feel like sometimes, and I talk to a lot of guys, and I feel like sometimes we can just get into a bit of an agreement match, if you will, right? Like we're just parroting each other's points. I love this because you have different points that come out and they're very sensible. Like I think you're not one of these guys that comes and is contrarian to be contrarian. You have great solid points to back these up. I think some people out there are just contrarian to be contrarian and they say things that don't even make sense. And you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Everything you say makes sense to me. And I think that's something I really admire. I admire your process. And, so this is always a fun thing and a privilege to be on, man. So can't thank you enough for it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I know we're going to collab in the future on something else. I don't know what it will be, but if you need anything Titans related, draft related, and there's an open spot, just call me up, hit me up, and I will do the same for you. So thanks.
Thank you.
Ready for the next episode, but cyber applause for Mr. Farabaugh. Thanks, Nick, and I'll see you.
Thank you.